Dave with AAA Coach, retired Master Sergeant in the United States Army Special Forces, Tactical Hive Instructor, NRA Instructor, Distinguished Expert in Pistol via NRA, a Colorado Verified Instructor. Today we're going to talk about firearm safety for children and why it's important. Stay tuned. Firearms can be good or bad, or at least they can be used for good purposes or bad purposes. Some bad or nefarious purposes, obviously, is murder, uh, using a gun to make somebody do something they don't want to do, such as the R word, or such as forcing them to do something else. Um, Robbery, obviously, these things are bad. But guns can also be used for good things, right? So, self defense, competitions, hunting, etc. Those kinds of things are legal purposes. And we still need to teach our children that they do have a Second Amendment right as soon as they turn 18, which I think is the problem with today's day and age with our court system saying that 21, some of it anyway, is the age to which a person gets their rights. Um, Obviously, at 17, you can join the military service in a delayed entry program. So if you can join at 17, 18 years old, then why are you considered less than a citizen that has the rights that is codified in the Bill of Rights, for example? Why are you less of a citizen until you're 21? Doesn't make any sense to me. So teaching firearm safety to a child, also firearms employment and the maintenance thereof, takes the curiosity away from the child. Children will most likely be exposed to a firearm some point in their childhood. If not in their childhood, then they'll be exposed to a firearm sometime in their young adult life. Somewhere between the ages of 18 and, say, 25, they will be exposed to a firearm, most likely. That might not be the case for everybody, but for the vast majority of children from ages, say, from 10 to 18, will have some kind of exposure to a firearm. If you didn't know that, well, now I'm telling you. Okay, so they're going to be exposed to the firearm somehow, some way. I would be curious to know if and when you had been exposed to a firearm. Comment below, please. Teaching these things, such as safety, employment, and maintenance, should be done by a professional, sort of. So, what I mean by that is the higher level of a professional that you could find to teach firearm safety to children, the better. For example, you're a father, you've hunted before, you've done the hunter safety course, you want to teach your son or your daughter firearm safety. Okay, that's great. That would probably be the lowest level of firearm safety training that a child should have. Then a step up from there, let's say you find an NRA instructor who has probably a little bit more safety caution than, let's say, the average hunter. Maybe. I mean, I'm speaking in generalities here, but So maybe that's the next level up. And then you find somebody like me who has been formally trained for years, over 2 decades, in the safe handling and employment of a firearm. So that would be the next level up. So the highest level that you can find to teach your child firearm safety, employment, and maintenance would be the best, because then they get to learn all of those things that that professional had actually learned. You can't just take a child, take them to the range, and say, here, shoot this firearm. You have to make a judgment call on what you can train and when you can train it to a child. Children are like sponges for sure. They are also very timid and shy for the most part. They may have some kind of apprehension to a firearm at all. Recently, I had 2 children and their father at the range. The 2 children were brothers, and they were both great. I loved them to death. The older one was a little more mature, and he didn't have any kind of apprehension or fear of the firearm. Now, the younger brother had a little bit of fear of the firearm, and he was also not paying attention as much. So I had to reel him in a couple of times to make sure that he understood the subject at hand. There's going to be levels, like I said. So, I started training my oldest son, which is now 20. I started training him at 5 years of age with a Walther P22. And so I think it's very important. And I've never had a risk, or I've never had a thought that my son would do anything nefarious with the firearm. If you don't go to the range with your son or your daughter and you don't observe them with the firearm, you actually don't know what they're capable of or what their thoughts are or anything of that nature. So that's another reason why firearm safety, employment, and maintenance training with a child is important. Which brings me to my next point of knives versus firearms. Okay, they're both tools. They can both be used to do good things and both be used to do bad things. The firearm is a lot more taboo nowadays when it comes to, ownership, possession, and use. And I think that's largely in part due to the media basically making firearms owners villains because we have firearms, right? So you see some kind of horrible shooting or something of that nature on the TV, and children are very impressionable, and they go, oh, well, that sucks, okay. And then they're told the firearm is the problem, is the issue, which that's not the problem. The firearm's never been the problem. It's never been the issue. But the child who's listening to this rhetoric is saying the firearm is the issue. So now they think it's like completely dangerous. This is the problem. If we get rid of guns, that's the solution, right, to the problem. So I don't like that, because we have millions of firearms in circulation throughout the world, and most of them are in the United States. Now we take knives, for example. I guarantee you, if you go to your kitchen, there's a knife that is in a drawer or on a counter or something of that nature. They're completely accessible to a child. You don't lock your knives up if you're not using them. I guarantee that for 99.99% of the families out there. And the only reason why I don't say 100%, because there might be some crazies out there that do lock their knives up. I don't know. But a knife is more accessible to a child than a firearm. Here in the state of Colorado, we have storage laws that we're supposed to abide by within our home to keep them away from unauthorized persons. We don't have the same thing for knives. Knives are completely accessible. They can be just as dangerous, like we saw here in New York just recently. We don't treat the knife as like we treat the firearm. Why is that? They're both dangerous. They can both be used for bad things. Well, because we teach knife safety to a child. We teach them, don't touch the blade. Put it in the sheath when you're done with it, possibly. We teach them how to cut a tomato or a onion or any kind of vegetable or meat. We teach them these things. So we teach knife safety to a child, and the child doesn't pick the knife up to go do whatever they're going to do with it. But we don't teach firearm safety to a child, whether you have a firearm in your house or not. If we don't teach firearm safety to a child, and if that child gains access to a firearm, let's say in somebody else's house, and that child is curious about the firearm, and they pick the firearm up, and they accidentally shoot themselves or somebody else, that's on us. That is on us as parents. We absolutely need to teach not only knife safety, but firearm safety for the same reasons. Because our child is likely going to be exposed to both of these things at some point in their life. If we continue to say that firearms are taboo, and this is for you maybe anti-gun people, if you're watching this channel, probably not, or maybe you're on the fence about firearms. If we don't teach firearm safety to our children, that's on us. Whether you have a firearm in your house or not, whether you like firearms or not, it doesn't matter. At a minimum, firearm safety should be taught to our children, and it doesn't just stop at a lecture. A lecture being something like, always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. Always keep your finger off the trigger until ready to shoot. But all of these things, yeah, they're good things, don't get me wrong. If we just tell that to a child and there's no practical application, they're not going to learn it. They're not going to learn it. There has to be some kind of practical application at the range. They have to feel the concussive pressure of the firearm. They have to feel the recoil of the firearm. They have to see what damage can be done with a firearm so they understand how dangerous and lethal it can be. It's also a point to see how your child handles the firearm. Those kinds of firearm safety things need to happen. If you go take a hunter safety course, that's a non-shooting one, then guess what? They don't get to see all those things at the range, and neither do you. Okay, so that's pretty much it for my spiel on why firearm safety is important, and it's closely related to any kind of other safety measures that you would take with a child. You know, whether it be with a knife, a firearm, whether you're teaching a teenager how to drive, you're exposing them to things that are dangerous. It's like Jordan Peterson said, it says, doing dangerous things carefully, right? Because that's what we all do. We do dangerous things carefully and with practice and training, etc., exposure. Whether you do or don't have a firearm, whether you're anti-gun, pro-gun, it's going to be beneficial for you to get the child and yourself to the range and at least be exposed to firearms in general. If you like this video, like, share, comment, do all the things you're supposed to do when you like somebody's social post. Tech out.